Hi, and welcome to Ginger English. I'm Sarah, and today we have an A2 level podcast for you. Okay, I want you to think about something. You wake up in the morning, you go to your kitchen, you want to make coffee, but someone is already there. A man, a stranger. He is sitting at your table. He is drinking your coffee, and he looks at you and says, "Good morning. I hope you don't mind. I made a fresh pot." What do you do? Do you scream? Do you call 911? Do you run out of the house? Well, Karen Miller didn't do any of those things. And that decision, that one small moment, changed her life in a way she never expected. This is a story about a woman who lived alone, a woman who never locked her door, a woman who thought her life was quiet and simple and done. No more big surprises, no more big changes, just her house, her garden, and her cat named Biscuit. But life had other plans. Today, we are talking about something that really happened in a small neighborhood in Burlington, Vermont. A story about a wrong door, a cup of coffee, and a friendship that nobody saw coming. And trust me, by the end of this podcast, you are going to feel something. Maybe you will laugh, maybe you will cry, maybe both. So let's go back. Let's go back to a Tuesday morning in October. The trees in Burlington were orange and red. It was cold outside. Karen was still in her pajamas, and her front door was open. Not broken open, not forced open, just open. Because Karen never locked it. Not once in 15 years. Her neighbors knew this, her daughter knew this, and now so did a complete stranger. His name was David Reyes. He was 45 years old. He just moved to Burlington from Chicago. New city, new house, new life. Everything was new and a little confusing. And on that Tuesday morning, he was very, very confused about one important thing. His address? He thought he lived at 14 Maple Street. He did not. He lived at 41 Maple Street. And Karen? Karen lived at 14 Maple Street, alone, with Biscuit the cat and an unlocked front door. So when David walked in, put his bag down, looked around, and thought, wow, the previous owners left a lot of stuff, he had no idea. No idea at all. He just found the coffee maker, found the coffee, and started his morning. And Karen walked downstairs in her pink pajamas and found him. Now, I know what you are thinking. You are thinking, okay, Sarah, this sounds scary. A stranger in your house? That is not funny. That is not a cute story. That is a problem, and you are right. It could have been very bad. But here is the thing about Karen Miller. She was not a woman who panicked easily. She lived alone for 12 years. She fixed her own roof. She drove herself to the hospital once with a broken arm. She was tough, really tough. So when she saw David at her kitchen table, she did not scream. She just stood there and waited. Stay with us. This story is just getting started. Karen Miller was born and raised in Burlington, Vermont. She lived in the same house for 35 years. The same small white house on Maple Street with a red door and a big oak tree in the front yard. She knew every crack in the sidewalk. She knew every neighbor on the street. She knew which step on her staircase made a noise at night. This was her world. Small, quiet, and familiar. Karen had one daughter. Her name was Lisa. Lisa was 42 years old and lived about 2 hours away in Boston. She called her mom every Sunday, sometimes on Wednesdays too. She was a good daughter, but she worried a lot about everything. About Karen living alone, about Karen not locking her door, about Karen being too independent for her own good. Mom, please, just lock the door. One time, try it. Lisa, I have lived here for 35 years and nothing bad ever happened. That doesn't mean nothing bad can happen. This conversation happened many, many times. Karen always smiled and said, okay. And then she never locked the door. Because for Karen, an unlocked door was not careless. It was a choice. It meant, I am not afraid. I trust my neighbors. I trust this town. This is my home. And Burlington, Vermont, well, it really is that kind of place. Small streets, old trees, people who say hello when they walk past you, farmers markets on weekends, apple cider in the fall. It feels safe. It feels like home. Karen loved it deeply. Now, David Reyes. Let's talk about David for a moment. David was not from Vermont. He was from Chicago. Big city, fast life. Lots of noise, lots of people, lots of everything. He worked in marketing for 20 years, long hours, stressful days. And then one day, he just stopped. He quit his job. He sold his apartment. He packed 2 bags and 1 box. And he moved to Burlington. Why Burlington? His grandmother used to live there a long time ago. He visited her as a child every summer. He remembered the quiet streets. He remembered the apple trees. He remembered feeling calm. And after 20 years in Chicago, calm was exactly what he needed. He found a house online. He signed the papers. He got the keys. And on that Tuesday morning in October, he drove up to Maple Street with his 2 bags and 1 box and walked into the wrong house. Now, I want to be fair to David here. The houses on Maple Street look very similar. Same white paint, same small porches, and the number on Karen's door, well, the 4 was a little broken. It looked like a 1 if you were tired. And David was very tired. He drove all night from Chicago. He had no coffee. He had no sleep. And he had the wrong address written in his phone. So really, it was an easy mistake to make. Just not a small one. Let me paint you a picture. It is 7:15 in the morning. The sun is just coming up. The light is soft and orange. Outside, the oak tree in front of the house is dropping its leaves. One by one, slowly, quietly. Biscuit the cat is sleeping on the couch. Everything is calm. Everything is normal. Karen is upstairs. She is just waking up. She can smell something. Something warm and familiar. Coffee. Fresh coffee. And for one small second, just 1 second, she smiles because she loves the smell of coffee in the morning. It is her favorite thing. Then she stops. She lives alone. She did not make coffee. She sits up in bed. She listens. She can hear something downstairs, a small noise, a chair moving, a cup on a table. Someone is in her kitchen. Now, what does Karen do? Does she call 911? Does she grab something heavy? Does she hide under the bed? No, she does not do any of those things. Karen Miller gets up. She puts on her slippers and she walks downstairs. I know. Most people would not do this. Most people would lock the bedroom door and call the police immediately. But Karen was not most people. She said later, and this is a real quote, she said, "I was more curious than scared. I just wanted to see." So she walked into the kitchen, and there he was, a man, maybe 40, 45 years old, dark hair, a little messy. He was wearing a gray sweater and jeans. He had a travel mug in one hand, and he was looking out the window at the oak tree. He looked tired and peaceful, like a man who just arrived somewhere after a very long road. He did not hear her come in. Karen stood in the doorway for a moment. She looked at him. She looked at the coffee maker, her coffee maker. She looked at his bag on the floor, a big black bag, like he was moving somewhere. She looked back at him, and then she said, very calmly, very quietly, "Excuse me." David turned around so fast, he almost dropped his coffee. He looked at Karen. Karen looked at him. For about 3 seconds, nobody said anything. Then David said, oh no. And Karen said, yes, oh no is correct. And that, right there, was the beginning of everything. Because David did not run. He did not make excuses. He just put down his coffee mug, put his hand on his face, and said, "I think I have the wrong house." And Karen looked at him for a long moment. And then she did something nobody expected. She walked to the cabinet. She took out a second mug. She poured herself some coffee. Her coffee from her coffee maker in her kitchen. She sat down at the table and she said, "Tell me how this happened." So David sat down. And he told her everything. He told her about Chicago, about the long hours and the stress and the job that made him feel like he was disappearing a little more every year. He told her about his grandmother. Her name was Rosa, and how she lived in Burlington when he was a boy. How he used to visit her every July. How she made him breakfast every morning, and they sat on the porch and watched the street wake up. He told Karen that Rosa died 7 years ago, and that he never really said goodbye to that feeling. That feeling of sitting on a porch in a quiet town and just breathing. So he came back to Burlington to find it again. Karen listened to all of this without saying a word. She just held her coffee mug with both hands and listened. And when David finished talking, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "How did you get the address wrong?" David pulled out his phone. He showed her. He had typed 14 Maple Street, but his new address was 41 Maple Street. He mixed up the numbers. Simple as that. Karen looked at the phone, then she looked at him. Then she looked at the broken number 4 on her front door. She could see it from where she was sitting, and she started to laugh. Not a small laugh, a real laugh. The kind that comes from your stomach. David looked at her, and then he started laughing too. And for about 30 seconds, 2 complete strangers sat in a kitchen in Burlington, Vermont, and laughed together about a broken number on a door. When they stopped laughing, Karen wiped her eyes and said, "Well, the coffee is good at least." David said, "I used your last scoop. I'm sorry." Karen said, "I have more in the cabinet." And that was it. That was the whole conversation. No anger, no drama. Just 2 people and a pot of coffee and a broken number 4. David finished his coffee. He stood up. He apologized again. Really apologized, seriously this time. He picked up his bag, he walked to the door, and then he stopped. He turned around and looked at Karen's kitchen. Really looked at it. There was a cabinet door hanging off its hinge. There was a window that was stuck half open with a book holding it up. There was a small crack in the wall near the sink that someone had tried to cover with tape, white tape, on a yellow wall. David said, "Do you have a screwdriver?" Karen said, "Excuse me?" "The cabinet door. It just needs 1 screw. I can fix it in 2 minutes." Karen looked at the cabinet door. She looked at David. She said, "And I love this," she said, "You walked into my house by mistake, drank my last coffee, and now you want to fix my cabinet?" David said, "I feel bad about the coffee." Karen was quiet for a second. Then she pointed to the drawer next to the sink and said, "Screwdriver is in there." And David Reyes, a complete stranger who walked into the wrong house, fixed her cabinet door. Then he fixed the window. Then he looked at the crack in the wall and said he would come back with the right material to fix that too. Karen stood in the middle of her kitchen and watched all of this happen. And she felt something she had not felt in a long time. She felt surprised. And surprised for Karen was a very good thing. And he did come back the next morning with a small bag of supplies from the hardware store on Church Street. He knocked on the door this time, the right door, number 14, and Karen opened it and said, "You actually came back." David said, "I said I would." Karen looked at him for a second. Then she opened the door wider and said, "Coffee is already made." And that was how it started. David came back the next day, and the day after that, and the day after that. Every morning, for the first week, he knocked on Karen's door. Sometimes he had a small repair to do. The crack in the wall, a loose step on the porch, a light in the hallway that stopped working. Sometimes he had nothing to fix at all. He just came for the coffee. And the conversation, and the conversations. They were good, really good. Karen told David about Burlington, about the best places to eat, about the farmer's market on Saturday mornings and which farmers had the best apples, about the community garden 3 blocks away where she grew tomatoes every summer, about the neighbors, who was friendly, who was not, who had a dog that barked too much at night. David told Karen about Chicago, about the restaurants and the music and the energy of a big city, but also about the loneliness, about working so hard for so long and one day realizing you don't really have anyone to call. Not a real call, not the kind where someone actually listens. Karen listened. She was very good at listening. Biscuit the cat, who did not like anybody, not even the mailman, started sitting next to David on the couch. Karen said she had never seen Biscuit do that with a stranger before. David said maybe Biscuit just recognized a fellow traveler, someone who was also looking for a place to feel at home. Karen thought about that for a long time after he said it. The neighbors noticed, of course. This is Burlington. People notice things. Mrs. Patterson from number 18 asked Karen who the man was that she kept seeing at her door every morning. Karen said, a neighbor. Mrs. Patterson said, which neighbor? Karen said, the new one. Mrs. Patterson said, the one on 41? Karen said, yes. Mrs. Patterson nodded slowly. In that way, that means I have many more questions, but I will save them for later. And Karen smiled, because she was not used to having something in her life that other people were curious about. It felt nice, like a small secret, a good one. But there was one person who was not going to smile about this, one person who was going to hear about the man at number 41 and not think it was sweet or interesting or nice at all. Lisa called on Sunday as always, and Karen, and because she was honest, always honest, told her daughter about David. There was a very long silence on the phone. Then Lisa said, Mom, a strange man has been coming to your house every morning for a week, and you are just telling me this now? Karen said, I did not want you to worry. Lisa said, I am worrying. I am worrying a lot. And that Sunday phone call was the beginning of the next problem. Lisa did not wait. She got in her car the very next morning and drove 2 hours from Boston to Burlington. She did not call first. She just came. Karen was in the kitchen when she heard the car in the driveway. She looked out the window and saw Lisa's blue Honda, and she said out loud to Biscuit, "Oh, here we go." Lisa walked in through the front door, the unlocked front door. She dropped her bag, looked around, and said, "Where is he?" Karen said, "Good morning to you too, Lisa." "Mom, where is he?" "He is not here. He comes in the morning. You just missed him." Lisa sat down at the kitchen table, the same table where David sat on that first Tuesday. And she put her hands flat on the table and took a breath. Karen could see that she was trying very hard to be calm. "Mom," Lisa said, "I need you to understand something. A man you do not know walked into your house, and instead of calling the police, you gave him coffee, and now he comes here every day. Do you not see the problem?" Karen sat down across from her. She said, "I see that you are scared, and I understand that. But Lisa, I know people. I have known people my whole life, and David is a good person. You have known him for 1 week. I knew your father was a good person in the first 5 minutes. Some things you just know. Lisa closed her eyes. This was not the answer she wanted. She stayed in Burlington for 2 days. And on the second morning, Tuesday again, exactly 1 week after the first Tuesday, David knocked on the door at 7:30. Karen opened it, and there was Lisa, standing right behind her mother, arms crossed, looking at David like he was a problem she needed to solve. David looked at Karen. Karen gave him a small smile that said, "I am sorry. This is my daughter. Please be patient." David looked at Lisa. He said, "You must be Lisa. I am David. I am very sorry about the coffee." Lisa said, "What?" Karen said, "It is a long story. Come in, David. Coffee is ready." And so the three of them sat at the kitchen table. And David, to his credit, did not try to be charming or funny. He just talked to Lisa the same way he talked to Karen. Honestly, quietly. He told her about the wrong address, about the broken number 4, about Rosa, his grandmother, and why he came to Burlington. He told her that he understood why she was worried. He said, "If my mother lived alone and a stranger walked into her house, I would drive 2 hours too, probably faster." Lisa looked at him for a long moment. Then she looked at her mom. Karen was watching Lisa carefully, waiting. Finally, Lisa said, "The number 4 on our door has been broken for 3 years. Karen said, "I know. I told you to fix it. I know. So this is actually your fault." Karen laughed, and then, slowly, just a little, Lisa laughed too. It was not a big moment. It was not a movie moment, but something in the room changed. Something relaxed, and David quietly got up, found the screwdriver in the drawer next to the sink, went outside, and fixed the number 4 on the door. Lisa watched him through the window, and she said to her mother, very quietly, "Okay, I think I understand." Karen said, "Good, now drink your coffee." 3 months passed. October became November. November became December. The oak tree in front of Karen's house lost all its leaves. Snow came, first a little, then a lot. The kind of snow that makes everything soft and slow and beautiful. And through all of it, David kept coming. Not every morning anymore. Things had settled into something more natural, maybe 4 times a week. Sometimes he brought bagels from the place on Church Street that Karen liked. Sometimes Karen made soup and left a container on his porch. Sometimes they just sat and read, Karen with her book, David with his laptop, and did not talk much at all. Just 2 people, comfortable in the same silence. Lisa came back in November, and then again in December. She said it was to check on her mom, but Karen noticed that Lisa and David talked for a long time about what it means to start over somewhere new. Karen noticed that Lisa stopped crossing her arms when David was in the room. Karen noticed a lot of things. She did not say anything. She just smiled into her coffee cup. And then, December 15th, the day everything came together and almost fell apart. It was a Saturday. Karen woke up early. She went downstairs. She made coffee. She sat at the kitchen table and looked around. The cabinet door was fixed. The window opened and closed properly. The crack in the wall was smooth and painted over. The right color yellow, not covered with white tape anymore. The step on the porch was quiet. The hallway light worked. Her house felt different, not because it was repaired, but because it felt like someone cared about it. She was still sitting there when David knocked on the door. He came in. He saw her face and stopped. "Are you okay?" Karen looked at him. She said, "David, can I ask you something?" He sat down. "Of course." "Why do you keep coming here? You have your own house now. You don't owe me anything." The coffee was not that expensive. David was quiet for a moment. Then he said, My grandmother Rosa used to say that home is not an address. It is a feeling. It is the place where someone is happy you arrived. He paused. When I knocked on the wrong door that morning, I was tired and lost, and I didn't know anyone in this town. And you didn't call the police. You didn't yell at me. You just sat down and said, "Tell me how this happened." Nobody had done that for me in a very long time. Karen did not say anything, but her eyes were bright. "So I keep coming," David said, "because this is the place where I feel like I arrived somewhere, even if I arrived by mistake." Karen stood up. She walked to the fixed cabinet and took out 2 mugs. She poured the coffee. She put 1 mug in front of David. She sat back down. She said, "Rosa sounds like she was a very smart woman." David smiled. "She was. She would have liked you." Karen picked up her coffee. "I would have liked her too." Outside, through the kitchen window, snow was falling on Maple Street, soft and slow, and everything, for one moment, was exactly right. So, that is the story of Karen Miller, a woman in Burlington, Vermont, who never locked her door. And one Tuesday morning in October, that open door changed everything. I think about this story a lot because it is so easy to read it and think, wow, she was lucky. Lucky that David was a good person. Lucky that nothing bad happened. And yes, that is true. She was lucky. But here is the other side of that. How many times in life does something go wrong and it turns out to be the best thing that ever happened? How many times does a mistake open a door, a real one, not just a number 14 door on Maple Street, to something you never expected? David typed the wrong address. He drove all night. He walked into the wrong house. He drank the last scoop of coffee. By every normal standard, that morning was a disaster, and it became the beginning of a friendship that gave both of them something they really needed. Karen needed someone to surprise her. David needed someone to sit down and say, "Tell me how this happened." 2 very simple things, and they found them in the most impossible way. I also think about Lisa, because Lisa was not wrong to worry. She was a good daughter doing exactly what a good daughter does. But she was also brave enough to sit down at that kitchen table and listen. And that willingness to listen even when you are scared, that is not a small thing. That is actually a very big thing. And Biscuit the cat, of course. Biscuit knew first. Biscuit always knows. Now, what happened after December 15th? Karen still lives on Maple Street. The door is locked now, sometimes, not always. Old habits are hard to change. David lives at number 41 and comes over for coffee most mornings. Lisa visited again in February and stayed for a whole week. Mrs. Patterson from number 18 finally stopped asking questions and just started waving at David like a normal neighbor. And the broken number 4 on the door, David fixed it. But Karen says sometimes she wishes he hadn't, because that little broken 4, that easy mistake, was the beginning of everything. Life is strange, and sometimes the wrong door is exactly the right one. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of Ginger English. If this story made you feel something, if it made you smile or think, or maybe even look at your own front door a little differently, please share it with someone. Send it to a friend. Send it to your mom. Send it to that one person who never locks their door and you always worried about them. And if you are new here, welcome. We do this every week. Real stories, real emotions, real English. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. And if you liked today's story, please leave us a comment below. Tell us, what would you have done? Would you have called 911? Or would you have made a second cup of coffee? I am Sarah. This was Ginger English, and I will see you in the next one.